sure this is...
Think we're rolling?
Okay, and this is the episode where we wear matching jumpers. Both jumpers belong to Dr. Sally Bell. I am wearing the grey version, representing the mum of boys tea.
Yes, and I am the blue representing the girl tea.
Yes, because between us we have six children
yeah.
which are growing up a bit. We are beyond the baby and toddler phase.
We are, hallelujah.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
Yes, we do.
And we are in that phase that I feel actually isn't spoken about so much, those sort of tweeny years up to the teen years, and there's not as much talk around that kind of part of mumhood going on in the public space.
So your boys, how old are your boys?
Well, Noah is just about to be 17, then 14 and 11. So well and truly in that, going to fly the nest before too long.
Wow. And my girlies are 14, 12 and 9, so a little bit younger.
But they're all in that sort of, we're beginning to get more and more independent and making their own choices and definitely out of the very impressionable early years, aren't we, and into the next phase, which brings all sorts of freedoms and changes and wonderful things, but also a whole different set of challenges.
What do you find challenging?
I find challenging having any kind of space to think, which is weird because everyone always feels like when they're little it is constant, isn't it? Because you can't go to the loo without somebody needing you, but I think I still can't go to the loo without a question or a thought. And they're a lot older, I think, because I don't go to bed so early. That's a massive change nobody prepares you for. I currently prepare all my friends of younger ones to think, you know, how are you going to get a date night? You know, you've got to think about this because it gets really hard. So that's one of my major challenges. What about you? What do you find hard? Having time with Sam, essentially, because of the kids.
I think it's letting go for me. So I think mine is still a bit younger, and so you've probably had a bit more experience and time where you kind of let them. So it's around letting them make their own decisions and letting them make some rubbish decisions.
Oh, it's so hard, isn't
it? And I think probably there's that added pressure where I feel people look on as a family, and because I do all the health stuff, that pressure on them as girls around their body, and you know, so I'm aware of that, and growing girls in that environment where they have a healthy relationship with food and a healthy relationship with their bodies, and then because of what I do, I think maybe it's just my perception, but that added pressure where I feel eyes are kind of watching, and but
that's really hard. And I think what you said about body and image, it's actually, although we like historically always seen that very much as quite a female issue, it is a huge deal for young men now as well. The whole Instagram body, and you know, making sure that you look really ripped and you go to the gym. Just feel like there's a load more pressure in that sense than there used to be when our husbands were that kind of age, when they were in that sort of teenage phase. It just doesn't seem to be
as prevalent
as it is now. And added to that, you know, the fact that there is a whole heap more processed food, and we're a whole load more busy potentially as families. I don't know if that's fair to say, but it does seem like families are stretched and busy. Trying to put the foundations that you talk about into family life can feel really hard, particularly in teenage children. You know, what do we do, and how do we undo some of the untold you know, things that we've done before? I mean, there's loads of things I look back on and think, I probably wouldn't do it like that now. Sometimes we end up just doing nothing differently because we think we can't make change.
I know. And I do think like we need to be grappling with these questions around health, because we now have a situation where that generation isn't going to live as long as us.
Really?
We have a situation where 1 in 2 of us are going to have cancer in our lifetime, and that's set to increase. We've got a massive issue with mental health issues with our children, massive issue with autoimmunity and allergy, and that's escalating.
And obesity.
Yeah, yes, of course, and the obesity problem, and so we have to ask some questions, because these diseases are rooted in our lifestyle choices. It doesn't matter what you get handed down with your genetics. that doesn't dictate your destiny. Something has to switch those genes on. And what switches those genes on are the kind of environment that we put our bodies in. And that's why I constantly, hopefully in a helpful way, talk about the 5 foundations as a way to optimize health. And reverse disease as well. And that's why we need to be thinking how we do that as families, how we model that to our children, and how we can structure a lifestyle that will enable our children to thrive. And I think, we were talking earlier, we can really focus on food, can't we? And we're, nagging about what they're eating or what they're not eating, and they get off the bus and they go with their friends to the shop, and all of those kind of, where culturally we are eating the wrong things. How do we help our kids make the right decisions? And before we touch on that, I think it's really important that it's not all about food. And how actually I think that one of the best things that we can do for our kids is get them to sleep well. Right from the beginning, and the sleep science is just phenomenal when it comes to brain development and a child's development. Not only their physical growth and their ability to fight infection and cancer.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
It's really stunning. It's also about creativity. It's about emotional health, and so before we get all caught up on the food thing, I think creating, good rhythms around sleep from a young age, and where they have sleep issues, there's going to be some mums going, but my kid's just, 4 only sleeps for 4 hours. That's the time to realise that you need to get some help. And there is help out there, and I've got a little cheat sheet on my website. It's not particularly aimed at children, but there are a lot of things we can do to help children create rhythms.
I
around
have to
sleep.
say I'm quite passionate about sleep with the children. Always have been. This whole, sleep is so key. And probably they sometimes think I'm a bit of a nag about sleep, and they'll say to me, my mates go to bed much later than I do. I mean, I'm not ridiculous. They don't go to bed really early, but they're not on the late side either. And they think I see sleep as the answer to everything. I'll say, you're tired, you haven't had enough sleep. That's one of my pillars. So I remember, you haven't had enough sleep, you haven't had enough to drink, or you're hungry, and that's basically my answer to everything. But like having that structure around sleep is good, isn't it, in terms of not having devices before bed and all those other things we can do to help our children to see that sleep is just so foundational to making, like you've said to me before, you make better decisions when you've slept well. So then the other stuff works its way
and
out.
even learning, like when you go to sleep, when we learn, we store it in a place in our brain that's kind of our short-term memory, and then when we go to sleep, that's when it gets kind of whooshes up to our long-term memory, and that happens at a certain time of the night, and so if you're missing that section of sleep, then it's going to impact your learning ability as well, and your creative ability.
So when they're cramming for exams,
and they're cutting
their sleep, that's the exact wrong thing to do. Let that sleep.
So I think creating healthy sleep patterns for our kids is important. That's my dog whining in the background. We shut him out the kitchen.
He's going to have to stay there now.
He wants to come in. But I think the other thing is, and just before we go on, I think around emotional health, because we have such a massive issue around mental health with our kids, is how important sleep is with that as well. Like those few hours just before you wake up, you go into a particular type of sleep that it's almost like a reset button on your emotional health. And so when we're getting our kids up early for early school times and buses, and actually we do them a disservice, because actually that's the bit of sleep that's really important around mental health. And so again, just like before we're rushing to the doctor for drugs, they actually are some things around, some simple things around, is my kid sleeping well?
That's a good question.
to kind of help around mental health
and perhaps the ages that our children are, we can begin to speak to them about this is what is happening when you're sleeping, this is why you need it, and it's not just mum being mummy nag, it's actually that your body needs this for its growth, it needs it for its health and its healing, but also for your emotional health, that your sleep will impact all those things. I remember you telling me about a client you had and to do with sleep, but that was the only thing you changed. to start with.
Was that he had an obesity
Yeah,
issue?
and you just got his sleep right before
yeah.
you did anything
Yes.
else. And even that had an impact on his health.
Yeah, because sleep deprivation, it upsets the hormones involved in weight and appetite and sugar control, as well as impulsivity control. So what happens is if you're sleep deprived, your body is wired to keep fat, you know, and crave sugar and be more impulsive.
Yeah.
So actually one of the first things I do with a lot of my patients that are struggling with obesity is focus on sleep, because if I ask them to change anything and I haven't addressed sleep, I'm setting them up to fail. And yeah, again, an obesity problem with our children, it's not just calories in, calories out. No. It is about sleep, it's about gut health, it's about emotional health. All of these things kind of together, as well as what we eat and when we eat, impacts weight gain.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
And what do you think is the role we play to help our children with stress as well, and dealing with that?
Yeah, because stress is another thing. Like, you know, we were created to respond to a situation, and then we close the stress cycle, and we reset and we relax. And we can often think stress is kind of exams and work deadlines, but actually when you look at the research, there's a whole host of things that stresses us. Noise stresses us, traffic stresses us, the kind of foods that we eat can create a stress response. Sleep deprivation stresses us, as well as all
relational
stuff, and we are bombarded by these stresses continually, and when we're in that stress response, we suppress our ability to fight infection and cancer and keep us healthy, and so yes, teaching our kids how to de-stress and manage stress is really important around health. And we you know, your boys are very different, my girls are very different, and how they de-stress, you have to work that out.
Work out what works for them.
I know, and because, you know, de-stressing isn't just about, you know, your yogi that's sitting there chanting, which is a fabulous way of de-stressing. I love that, but actually there are other ways. So for my one child, she's very introverted. She comes home, she doesn't want to speak to anybody or see anybody, and her idea would be going down to the stables and riding and getting out to nature. Whereas my other child comes in, the worst thing you could ever do is ask her to go and be on her own, because she wants to relate and verbally, you know, reason and it's touch and it's cuddles and then she resets. And so, you know, as you know, tell me about your boys.
Totally. I mean, I've got kids on similar to you. They respond different ways to stress. One of my children just desperately needs to have the rhythm around exercise and sport, and really sees the benefit on his mental health and his ability to cope with life is having that structure in place, that he goes and exercises in some way, shape or form every single day. I've got another one that wants to process everything through questioning and wants to talk about it, and may have much more of an emotional response to something and has to sort of go round the cycle and come down. And another that can do a funny combination of wanting to almost not talk about something that's stressful fully, because by doing so it becomes real, but desperately wants to be touched and close and connect, and does need to talk about it really, and needs that coaxing. And I'm a real believer in the need to talk. You know, we all have to do. Some people want to vent immediately, and others need their time first. But they are so different in how they need my help. And I don't always get that right. And being somebody who wants to talk things through, sometimes I can push it too much too quickly, and they need to go and do their venting or have their space first. Before they can. It's hard. It's really hard, because we can, like you've just said, you can put reflect yourself onto what you think your children need, and they need something way different.
And I think you mentioned also where the other foundation comes in around movement, and so movement's a wonderful remedy for stress, and it's a great in terms of managing emotional health and physical health, and so we haven't even talked about food, and we've done sleep, really stress, movement, and actually addressing some of those things can just set our kids on a path to thrive. But the food piece, the food, it's very emotive, isn't it?
It is, and it can make you feel, I can feel quite lacking as a mum if I'm not doing it as brilliantly as others. I definitely am not in the category of, you know, excellence around the food that we eat. I would also say there's lots of good things that we do, but you can always feel with this as a parent, you know, there's more I should be doing, and then thinking, how do I finance this? You know, I've said to you loads of times, they will just eat and eat and eat, and they can, because they're always moving as well. But how do you make sure what they're eating is stuff that's good for them and not just filler? Which I was, you know, toast is an easy peasy thing to just say, have some toast or have some cereal, and then not. You know, there are worse things, but there are a lot better things as well.
And I think I can be too neurotic, and I've got girlies, and I actually growing up, I had my own issues with food and had anorexia and bulimia, and so that whole emotional thing around food, and so I can get too controlling and too upset about it, and trying to bring that balance. So one of the things that I try to model and do with my kids is that the 80-20 rule, where try and help them, you know, make, you know, and we talk about it. We say, look, you know, during the week we kind of do a Sunday to Thursday, make good decisions, you know, don't have sugary sweets and treats, you know, choose a piece of fruit where you can. And then when it comes to sort of Friday, we make brownies, we make popcorn, we watch a movie. If they want to do sweets and stuff, they can do that on a Saturday, and just so that it's a rhythm where
and they can see that everything has its place.
And you know, I've got my sweet jar up there for my youngest. Because one of the things is, like, school, like, they just, at that younger age, they just come back all the time with sweets. And it does my head in. But she puts everything in a jar, and then on a Saturday she can do what she wants with it.
Really good.
And that's the way we've tried to create a rhythm around food and family. And I think one of them, again, just trying to get some times in the week where you eat together, which we've lost. I mean, again, it's just a beautiful thing. Like, food is more than nutrition. You know, food's
the coming together and the time to talk.
So, and that's quite difficult for working families, and it might be just, well, let's try and do it once a week, and that's fine, you know, just starting where you're at. And then I do think, like, as a nation, like, the best thing we can do for our health is getting processed food and factory-made food out of our diet, and getting more into whole food, which is inconvenient and requires more planning. But I think we have to start thinking about how we do that. And it's those small exchanges, isn't it? It's those just starting with, well, okay, when they come through the door, I'll have some carrot and hummus or something out, or you know, some kind of healthy choices that they can eat. That's maybe where you start before you think you're going to cook a stir fry and blah blah blah. And it's those little changes that I think. And
rather than thinking that doesn't matter, seeing all of those as progress, because obviously you've said this isn't something as a family you've arrived at overnight. So what's the trade that we can perhaps make for this month? What can we do in March? And then you can build a bit more on that, onto something else. And I really like the idea of everything having its place. And I think when we have that rhythm of when we have less, and then when we allow things that we wouldn't normally have, you can appreciate the special thing as well, rather than it just being every day I have these things.
I know.
Actually becomes more of a thing to be grateful for.
It is. And sugar isn't normal. Like, we need to kind of denormalise the sweet sugar stuff. It needs to be in that sort of, you know, treat camp, because the amount of sugar in our diet is driving, you know, our obesity problem, and it is driving disease. Like, sugar is toxic.
And driving this kind of emotional
issues,
and tiredness roller coaster.
And so it is, you know, we have to start grappling with some of these questions and how to do it, and talking to our kids and us. You know, I think at the end of the day they're watching us, you know, and what are we doing? What are we modelling? And you know, how are we caring for ourselves? Because that's what they'll end up doing.
So that is such a good point, such a challenge. What is it they're seeing from us, and how have we got a good and healthy attitude to food, to eat, our health, to our sleep? All that, you know, what are we doing, or what we're asking of them? How are we managing our stress? They're all really, like, big, tough parenting challenges, aren't they? But like you say, there's no point expecting something of our kids that we're not working on ourselves.
And I think the thing that, you know, holds all of my foundations together, so we talk about, you know, we've talked about sleep, we've talked about rest, which is around kind of that balance and stress management. We touched on that nutrition piece about, you know, trying to bring whole food into our diet, and we talked about just being active, but I think the glue that holds it together is this connection piece. And I, my 20 years of working as a doctor, you can work on their diet and you can work on getting them active and de-stressing them, but if they do not know as an adult that they're loved, it is such a difficult thing to undo. And I do feel like as mums, if we can send our kids off at 18 and they know that they belong, that they're believed in and that they're loved, all the rest you can tweak and work on and they can go on their own journey. But that piece is something that gets put in them as a child that will sustain them for life. And so I think we need to not beat ourselves up so much.
About
do they know they're loved?
Right.
Do they know they're loved? And when we kind of get it wrong and we're angry and maybe they don't feel so loved, do we go and say sorry? So I think as parents we need to hold those things together.
That's so good reminder. Just that is a simple thing that every mum can go back and do and just be intentional about looking them in the eyes and saying I love you and so glad that you're in my life, and just remind ourselves, just take a moment to do that and to really connect. Even the other stuff that we're going to get wrong over and over again, even that pizza that we're going to eat tomorrow night, and the Mars bar that they might have, or the late night, or the whatever, if there's that sort of, but I knew I was wanted and loved and valued. And that's quite releasing.
I remember quite a famous psychiatrist saying about how if a parent would sit on the end of their child's bed every night and just ask how their day was, like for 60 seconds, how that would reduce, how much mental health issues he saw. He talked about probably cutting out 50% of his workload. And we can do that. We can. It might be a grumpy teenager that doesn't want you in their room, but you can still say how much they know that you're asking. They know that you're there. And those younger ones will probably want to chew our ear off and tell us all about it. But just, so our 3 kids, 3 minutes of the day, we can carve that out. And, and a touch and a how are you. So it's not beyond, anything that we can do.
So for all us mums who always want to be perfect at everything, it's just about progress. It's just about steps in the right direction. It's not about looking at your journey and thinking, gosh, we aren't doing that. But thinking, actually, we've come a long way. And we're doing better than we were. And reminding myself that my number one role that I can do, that nobody else can do, is to let them know they're loved.
Yeah, great. It was good to chat.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Alex.